keeps you in Strive for 5 years? Because if you stopped drinking doing the course 5 years ago, why are you still there?
I'm still there because it gives back to me. You know, I'm there giving encouragement, but in reality, it's giving back to me.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone that doesn't drink alcohol, and I spend every wicked moment of my life helping other people do the same, like right now. Today, my guest is Anna Welch. Anna has been with Strive for nearly 5 years, right? 5 years, that's a long time, right? And I'm really proud of that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get Anna on the show, is to show you. I mean, there's people here that have been probably listening to me for 7-8 years now on this podcast, right? That still don't understand what Strive is all about. Okay, so this is our podcast. This is where we share our ideas around the truth about alcohol. We bring guests on to help you to understand that truth, and most importantly, to learn to live more consciously without alcohol in our lives, right? And you hear all that on the podcast. But what the vast majority of you don't see is the work that goes on behind the scenes in the coaching and the camaraderie and the community of Strive that is really making a difference in embodying this kind of information, this knowledge, and this understanding of just how powerful we all are. Like each and every single one of us has that innate wisdom within us, what we call self. And we're just not used to tapping into it. We're just not used to spending our time in that version of who we are, the very essence of who we are. We're actually programmed and designed by culture to spend most of our time in our ego, driven by the different parts of our sub-personalities that inevitably use dysfunctional habits and behaviors just to keep us safe, right? And Anna is a really great example of somebody who came to Strive over 5 years ago, a real kind of shell of who she really is, right? Really struggling with alcohol, struggling in relationships, struggling at times with her relationship with God, and being able to use God actually to help her find myself and to find Strive and to really make a difference. Today we call our workshop the Strive Method. Back then it was called The Truth About Alcohol. Anna, like most people, and this is another sounding call to everybody, I guess, Anna was very reluctant to take that course. Why? Why is that? When we're thinking about making a change in our lives and thinking about changing our relationship with alcohol, why are we so afraid then to take a course? Well, it's because there's a part of us that really wants to drink. There's a part of us that is terrified that if we remove alcohol from our lives, then that part will not be able to keep us safe, that we will have to feel anxiety, fear, overwhelm, that we will have to confront our demons, that we will have to get over our trauma, that we will have to go to therapy or have some coaching. We will have to step up and speak to our partner and express what we need in our relationship and where our needs are not being met. And as me and Anna talk, it's very easy for us to stop drinking alcohol. And that's why most of the industry focuses on these instant gratification, quit drinking very quickly. We're in January right now, right? Everybody's going to do dry January, right? Yeah, let's not stop drinking for a month. And that's great. But, beneath that is a lot of work that won't get done throughout dry January, which is that key work of understanding who we really are, how we feel, what we need in life. And just an understanding and some reflection on, hang on a minute, I am actually going through life here with the handbrake applied. What would happen if I took that handbrake off? And Strive is that community to allow you to take your handbrake off, right? And that is why Anna has been with us for 5 years, because we're not in the aftercare business, because we look at life differently. We look at life as that every single day we care. Every single day, myself and my other strivers, we are all growing and evolving in a little bit, learning off each other, and most importantly, leading each other to the most incredible change, right? We are becoming better parents. We are becoming better sons and daughters, better siblings, better friends, better partners, better all-around human beings, because we're learning to spend more time living in self, less time living in our parts. We're learning to love our parts, and integrate the whole into this wonderful, beautiful family that you can look in the mirror and you can be really proud of that it is you, right? So if you want to be seen, if you want to be heard, and if you want to matter, then come to Strive and learn what life is like after alcohol has been booted out of your life, okay? So without further ado, I'll shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of the beautiful Anna Welch. Anna, how are you doing? You look beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, when I reached out to you earlier, had just gotten up and I thought, man, I better get this computer stuff situated before we come on. So
yeah, well, you did it. You're very well prepared. I like it. Anna, just start by letting the people who are listening to this where you're from and how talk about your early experiences with alcohol and the culture in where you grew up.
Okay, well, I'm Anna Welch and I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I grew up in a culture where it was very normal to drink. When you're little, you don't know better. So what's going on around you, your environment is just normal, right? So I didn't know till much later in adult life when I started processing things in my life from a child that I realized that my dad was an alcoholic. And I never thought or saw him that way. Never did I ever think that he was an alcoholic. So, so I started drinking at a real young age, Lee. You know how your kids and I think I remember my first drink was on a dare. A cousin, we were at, I think it was Easter Sunday, and family and kids were all together at a lake. And a cousin said, "Hey, I'm going to go steal a beer and I dare you to take a sip." And I said, "Sure." And it wasn't just me. It was my cousin Jerry and others. And I don't remember who, but I noticed this. I did notice that when I was a teenager and I would drink with friends, always in hiding, right? I noticed that they drank and to just get a buzz, and I never was satisfied. I always drank to get drunk. I did notice that when I was a teen, and I questioned it, but I never, talked to anybody about it. I just kept going on. So, does that kind of answer your question? Sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, it brings up some interesting points. I mean, you talk about how you would never, growing up with your father, you would never look at him and think he would fit society's definition of an alcoholic. And then much later, when you think about it, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, I can see signs there that there's a dependency issue. If you would have approached him at the time and let him know how you were thinking, would he have argued against it, do you think?
My dad was a very different individual. I grew up in an era where Dad really didn't engage with me unless he was drunk. It's sad to say, but he was a very quiet man, a really hard worker. I always say that I got my work ethic from him because I realize now, looking back, that when I would see him on the way out to work, grab a beer and take it with him along with his lunch, I know now that it was to cure or try and cure a hangover. But I would never approach my dad. I just would feel the way I grew up that was disrespectful. Isn't that funny or weird?
Yeah, but, like just to talk to him about a grown up thing is not our place, right?
Right. And I would have never, I don't think back then I would have done it, Yeah. So I wish that I would have had more time with him. I wish that I would have been sober and had him to talk
Mm,
to him,
mm.
about everything that I've learned
It's
through
really,
strife, through you. So,
it's really interesting because when I relapsed, when I split up with Debbie, my first wife, and I then met and fell in love with Liza. I relapsed for about a month, and it was actually my son, who was 10 at the time, who we was in a restaurant, and I ordered a bottle of wine, and he said, "What are you doing? I thought you said alcohol had no value." And it was him, my little kid, really confronting me and saying, "Hey, come on, Dad, what are you doing?" Which allowed me to stop, and then go on a
right.
run that's over 10 years. So whilst I understand how our upbringing, I was the same. I don't think I would have spoken to my father about that. There is the opportunity for children to be really stark and honest with you, and for that to actually make a difference. Do you think?
hmm Yeah. That's why I think, Lee, that it was so hard for me when I was doing I think then it was called The Truth About Alcohol.
Mm.
Um, it was so hard for me to talk about things because I grew up that way. Like we never talked about hard things. We just didn't.
Yeah.
So it was a whole learning process for me while doing the assignments, having an opportunity to share truthfully what happened back then and where I was at now, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah. And I want to touch upon that because I think it's a really important point. But just before I do, this whole thing about when you said that one of the only times your father would speak to you actually or show you any attention was when he had a drink. It
Mhm.
reminded me in a nostalgic way of there are people who grow up where they they're terrified and they don't want to be anywhere near adults when they've had a drink because they can become violent and aggressive and rude and all these
Mhm.
below the line behaviors. But there's also this aspect where children are almost privy to almost like a social media biased viewpoint of alcohol. So they see uncles and aunts and mums and dads and they have a drink and all of a sudden they're a little bit looser with their money belts.
Mhm.
They can get away
Mhm.
with more. They get more attention and more love and more hugs, maybe. And that can be to the detriment of the youngster growing up because they could want their parents to actually drink because they're getting value out of it.
Yes. That's a good point. Yeah. I found that it broke my heart when I was little, and I found that because I didn't always live with my dad. That's another thing that I learned years later. I used to say that my dad raised me. In reality, he didn't raise me. It was his mom and aunt,
Mm,
my grandmother and aunt that raised us. So growing up, I was lived, like with my grandmother, with my aunt, with my brother, with my sister. But Yeah, so I'm losing my train of thought. When I lived with my aunt and I was in elementary school, my dad would come knocking on my aunt's door like at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, whenever the bar closed, and he would be calling my name, like Anna, Anna, and I would wake up and hear him, and I remember being little, and it would just break my heart to know that he was drunk and that he was calling on me. And I would get up, and my aunt would already be sitting on the couch, and she would go, shh, like go back to bed. And I would just say, please let him in, please let him in. And so she would, and she would sober him up with coffee and breakfast. But before that, he would just weep. He would just cry and cry. And he was so stuck on what had happened my mom leaving him with us 5 children. And he was so stuck on that. And it wasn't until years later that I realized, my dad never had the opportunity to work through his reasons of drinking. You know what I mean? So it wasn't until years later that I realized my poor dad. Now I understand why, one of the reasons that he drank so much or whatever. But it used to break my heart. And you're right, back to what you were saying, when we would have family get-togethers and the adults would all start drinking, they actually engaged with us. And it was fun for us. It was fun because we would play games. We would, I never did I think, oh, they're doing it because they're buzzed. I just thought, oh, great, it's sad.
It affects people differently because it's the way that we're thinking about it. So when I went for Christmas dinner this year, because the girls, Liza and Zia, are in LA and I wasn't able to go over there with them. So I had Christmas dinner with my my parents and my 2 sisters and my niece. And everyone except for my niece was pretty slammed very early, and Liza says to me, "What was it like then?" And I said, "Actually, you and Zia would have really enjoyed it because everybody's slammed, everybody's out of it, and everybody's just dancing and having a quote unquote good time. And Zia, if she just wants to dance, normally the adults won't dance with her. Now they're dancing. That's great, right? But for me, who wants who wants to have conversation and wants to have connection, as well as dancing and having that's not kind of what I want. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And the point about your father coming around, and alcohol being a outlet for him to express and release some emotion. I just want to touch upon that a moment because I think it's really important. Jude, my son, recently came back from Amsterdam, and he said to me, before the trip to Amsterdam, honestly, in my mind, you were like the greatest dad ever, right? Like you could do no wrong. Everybody was telling me you're the best dad ever, except for his mom and everybody in that context. But his friends, like, oh, I wish my dad was like yours. But then he said, I went to Amsterdam and I had a good time over there. And I realized after talking to my friends that you actually haven't been present in my life as much as I want you to because of divorce. And I'm very angry about that. And I want to talk about that. Now, that's great, but the problem was he was drunk. And it needed him to be drunk to have that conversation. To which somebody who I was talking to said to me, well, doesn't that make it a good thing then that alcohol allows him to do that? So let's just cover that a little bit a second, right? I don't think it does. And I think it's a red herring, and I think it's part of the illusion. And I think it's one of the reasons that allows people to continue to drink alcohol. If people use alcohol as a way to access their emotions, they are not building up, or they're not allowing their innate wisdom, their self, to do what comes naturally, and that is to be a human being and to express emotion. And it's something beautiful in being able to share the full broad of emotions: hatred, jealousy, happiness, joy, embarrassment, humiliation, shame, with somebody you love, and to have that trust and freedom. There's something beautifully human about that. And if you're not able to do that, you're missing out on something incredible that you only get one opportunity to get into on this planet, number one. And number two, if you do use alcohol as an outlet to get into those emotions, well, now you're not in control. Alcohol is in control. And the likelihood of that descending into anarchy is pretty great, right? So for those of you out there that are thinking, yeah, boom, alcohol's great for us to remove our inhibitions and to have really deep conversations, that's not really how it works. Do you want to say or share your history of that?
Yeah. I used to do that exact same thing, Lee. And I think it was because I had so much fear of speaking truth. And so I would use it as a tool to give me courage to share my heart. And it, I can remember times trying to do that. And the following morning, something would click like, oh, yeah, I talked about that, but I really didn't remember the full story. I mean, I was all over the place. And so it's sad. And so, no, I would not advise that. In fact, my husband, Steve, still drinks. And I learned early on as I was getting sober not to have conversations with him once he starts drinking, because he doesn't remember the next morning. And I learned that while getting sober. I thought that's why whenever we would have conversations and we were both drinking, the following morning I would want to bring it up, and he would, I mean, to him it was like, we didn't have that conversation.
Yeah.
And it would blow my mind, but I didn't know that it was the alcohol. It was the alcohol that just distorts truth. It distorts what you really want to say. It kind of takes over, and you get nowhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when COVID happened and people said that alcohol brought them together. It doesn't. It disconnects you. Like
it disconnects.
It's the fear of being alone in a house with your partner and having to speak the truth, as you said, is like, it's too much for some people. So they actually drink alcohol to disconnect. It doesn't connect you. I mean, from a very rational and logical perspective, if you just put two people in a room and just keep drinking, you're just going to go further apart, right? Like, and it's a massive interruption in the cycle of developing a healthy attachment styles and relationship and coming from a really secure place. Because if you can't sit down and speak the truth to be able to express your needs and what you want in a relationship, and so the other person understand, like, it's going to be really, really difficult to have a relationship. So, bang on.
Can I ask you? Yeah. Can I ask you a question? So, how did that conversation end with Jude? Did you talk to him the next day about, about it? Like,
yeah. So the conversation itself was very difficult. I would say for the first part of the conversation, I was very mindful. I was very above the line, as we say in Strive. Self was in control. And then as the conversation went on and I felt he was repeating himself a little bit too much, and I started to become defensive and my inner child came out and I went below the line. And then we started shouting at each other a little bit. And I started to try to impress my power over him as a parent. And I was fully aware of that. So the next day, and here's really interesting, the first thing that happens the next day is Jude calls me up and says, I'm sorry about last night. And I said to him, look, the only part of that apology that I will accept is getting drunk and turning up on my doorstep wanting to have that conversation. Don't ever apologize for having that conversation, right? Sober conversation like that all day long. Come on, let's have them. But there was something that we had to put right, in as much as he felt that he was betraying me by speaking the truth, that me falling in love with somebody else and having my life, which then takes me further away from him, was hurtful to him, and that I hurt him, and he felt that he wasn't allowed to say that. So afterwards, we had conversation around that, and we continue to have conversations around him really expressing his truth. But it's really difficult when you're divorced and you don't spend that daily that amount of time that you have with your children.
Right.
You don't have the time to be a dad. And a lot of the times I found with Jude, my time with Jude, he didn't want those conversations when he was younger, for example. And even now it's kind of like, Dad, yeah, we can talk about this, or we could just go play snooker and have a laugh. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when you're not divorced and you'll live with your children, there's more opportunity to say, okay, let's talk about this a little bit, right? There seems to be time pressure on the divorced parent. So if anyone's listening to this who've had to share, quote unquote, share their children, they'll understand what I'm talking about. But I've always prided myself on having open conversations with my kids, you know?
Yeah. My son came to visit once, and this is when I was still drinking. And he wanted to take me to one of his favorite bars here in Tulsa. And so I said, sure, we can go. And so he picked me up and we went, and he wanted to have a hard conversation with me. And I just would not go there with him, you know, and because we were both drinking, and it was our first drink. It wasn't like we were drunk or anything, you know. First of all, I was having a hard time being at a bar drinking with him, and because we had never done that. And so I was, you know, trying to process that. And then he started bringing stuff up. And I just finally had to say, Ryan, why don't we have this conversation when we're not over a drink? Let's have this conversation, you know, when we're both sober. And he's never brought it up again. This last visit, I asked him if there was anything that he wanted to talk about with me. And he said, what do you mean? I said, just anything. It can be an easy or hard conversation, anything that you want to know about me, or, you know, just anything. And he was like, no. So I was like, okay, you know, so, but yeah, I've been there with my son where he wanted to do that over a drink. And I thank God, you know, I mean, I was still drinking, that I just knew better not to go there with it, you know. So,
yeah. And it's difficult when that happens, because once someone's in their train of thought, right, I'm going to have this conversation, and it's like, okay, let's not have it. It's really difficult to wrest control away from that part of your personality that wants to have that conversation. Very difficult.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when did you go from being a, you know, like everybody in Tulsa, Oklahoma, pretty much like everybody in Cardiff, where I am at the moment, where everybody just goes out and drinks and that's what everybody's doing. How do you go then from someone who looks in the mirror one day and says, actually, I think I need to address this, or to stop, or to, like, what were your thoughts around it when you went from being unconscious to conscious around alcohol?
Yeah. So what was going on with me, Lee, right before I joined Strive, I was having a battle. I mean, like a real mental battle with drinking or not drinking. I wanted to stop drinking, but I didn't know how. And so it had been years that the struggle was going on. And I think a lot of us go through that. We just don't voice it. We just don't have somebody to talk to about it, you know, or have the support that we need. So it had been years of this buildup, and I was having blackouts just like pretty much every night, because I did all my drinking at home with my husband. And so God started to talk to me about that, you know, like giving me little warnings, you know, like you've got to, this isn't good. You got to start addressing this, you know, for my health. And so it was a buildup. But I remember my grandson, Daniel, was 16, and it was the first time that we discovered that he was really struggling with suicidal thoughts, depression, all this stuff. So he was admitted in a mental hospital for a week. And so I reached out to my son and told him what was going on. And he said, I want to come into town to see Daniel while he's there. And I said, oh, that would be great. You know, so he came, and I remember asking him, what would you like for dinner? So I can, you know, I always like to cook what he likes. And so can't remember, but he told me. And so I got home from work and I started, you know, preparing dinner. And then he texted me and he said, hey, Mom, I'm going to go straight to the hospital to see Daniel because they, you know, visitation is up at 8 or something like that. He said, and then I'll come home. I said, okay. I always drank when I cooked. from the time I got home, I started drinking. And so I remember him getting home. I remember me serving him food. And then I remember sitting on the couch in the living room and him coming to sit next to me. And he said, "You're drunk already, aren't you, Mom?" And I said, "No," of course, doing the typical denial thing, like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." Well, the next morning I get up and that's all I could remember doing. And it devastated me. It just heaps all this shame on you, and it wasn't so much shame. It was like, I felt so bad that he had made a trip, to visit his nephew who's struggling. And then, and so those were two things that happened that, it was like shortly after Ryan left, I just decided, and I cried out to God and I said, "Lord, you have got to help me. I don't want to drink anymore." And so I didn't. I did good the first day. I did good the second day. The third day, I knew I was going to drink because that's what I would do. If I had a real bad drinking night to where the next morning I remembered absolutely nothing and I felt physically sick, I would vow to myself, "No more. This is it." And it would take a day or two for me to feel better. And then I thought I could do it a better way. I could be better. I could be smarter. I could outsmart alcohol. Isn't that silly?
Yeah.
But I would think of all these different ways of drinking. And so the third day I was at work and I knew I was going to drink. I just knew, and because it was there, the urge was there. And I came home and I made it through the day. And that night, I just started, I always talk to God, having this conversation like, something's gotta, I gotta have something or I'm gonna drink, So I started Googling. It was late at night, about addiction. Of course, I didn't think I was addicted. I just thought I need help. I just need help. And so it kept taking me to rehabs or AA. And I kept saying, "No, I don't want to do AA and I'm not bad enough to go to rehab, So finally, in my frustration, I thought, I wonder if anybody blogs about alcoholism. So when I entered that, this site came up about the 20 best blogs about alcoholism. And so I kind of read, it would have a name and it would tell a little bit about the person. And you should be on that list because you weren't on that list, but Laura McCowan was. And I liked her it was just a little short, little bit about them. And I liked what she had to say. And I thought, okay, let me research her. And when I went to her website, I couldn't talk to anyone. I needed to talk then. And that's what I like about Strive is that you give us that platform where we can just, talk if we have the courage to. But I needed to talk to somebody. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go to YouTube and see if she's on there and I can, just get a little bit more information on her. And you were interviewing her. This thing popped up, Lee Davey interviewing Laura McCowan. And so I thought, okay, let me watch this, So I loved your introduction. You said, "Hi, my name is Lee Davey. I'm not an alcoholic and I refuse to be anonymous." And I just chuckled and I thought, who is this guy? So I started listening to your interview with Laura and I didn't even finish it because then I started researching you to see what you were all about. And then I saw that you had a platform where I could actually go on and talk to somebody. And I went on there and I don't know how long it took me to type something out because I was so afraid that this is so crazy, but I didn't want nobody to know who I was. And I really didn't want people to know that I needed help. But yet here I was, So I finally typed a little something in there. "Hi, my name's Anna, and I'm just here because I need help with blackouts." I think that's what I said. And and then I shut it down and I closed it and I put it away and I thought, okay, that's over with. And the next morning I get up and I went back to it and a couple of people had responded. And that was my start, my hope. It gave me so much hope. So I hope that you always keep that flat platform openly where people, can go on there and just, because you never know, there's some, you know what I mean? Somebody like me can be, which I know there's people needing help and wanting just, just to talk to somebody, and they have no one. So, but anyway, that was the start of it. And so I just kind of started communicating with different people on there. And I thought it was crazy. I really felt like this is really nuts, but it's given me something that I need. So I'm going to keep going. And I remember I was having I was just having all these emotions and irritability and didn't know what to do with myself when I got home. And a lot of times I didn't want to come home after work because I didn't want to drink. And so I remember just hopping on there and saying, I'm really struggling today because this is what's happening, So I can't remember what I shared, but Marlene, I think was her name, said, Anna, I think it would really benefit you to do the Truth About Alcohol course. And you had already reached out to me about doing it. And at the time I wasn't ready. And so I just said, it's not in my budget, right now, but thank you for offering. And then when she said, I think, what you're dealing with is white space. All that time that you spent drinking, you need to fill that time with something else. And that's what's happening. And it made perfect sense. And I reached out to you. And but when you offered it, I said, no, it's not in my budget. And you said, oh, that's okay. I got people who sponsor. And I thought, oh, gosh,
I can't get out of it.
Yes. But I don't remember what I said to you to just kind of, like, no, I'm not, I should have just said I'm not ready. But, you're so afraid to say or do anything when you're in the throes of, drinking or not drinking. And so I reached out to you and I said, do the course, but I don't want to take sponsor money. If you'll work with me, let me pay it in payments, which you gladly did. And so that was, long story short, that's how I ended up on Strive. And so it was years, Lee, of me battling mentally with this stronghold that alcohol had over my life. It didn't just happen overnight. I was already, vowing, breaking vows, to myself, not to anybody else, but just to myself, like, oh, I'm not going to drink anymore. I know it's making me sick. I know it's, and then, but yeah. And so doing the course, it was called The Truth About Alcohol then, was a lifesaver. It gave me something to do. And little did I know that I was going to learn life skills. I was going to learn so much more than just not drinking. I had no idea. And some of the assignments were hard. I'm not going to lie. You don't know how many times I would just it would bring me to tears because it would make me take a look inside me. And I didn't like what I saw so many times. And then I remember just feeling so much regret, oh, I've wasted so much time, and so, so sometimes I would read the assignment and I would just walk away and say, nope, not doing that right now, and then I was drawn back to it. And then I would do it, But one thing that I told myself, and this is a little piece of advice that I would share with anyone trying to quit drinking, is to be honest. I remember when I decided to do the Truth About Alcohol, I had a conversation with the Lord and I said, Father, just help me to be honest, because I knew that if I wasn't honest, this would not work. I had to go into this being honest about everything. And that's where I made that decision, that commitment, and I honored it. And I believe that's what, because wasn't there 9 of us starting that course? You happened to be my coach. Because Lori and Nikki were coaches as well. But it was, for some reason, we were your group. And I think there was 8 or 9 of us. And it was all new to me. So I didn't know who was where, And, and then at the end, when you said, Anna, you're the only one who have finished the course. Congratulations. I was like, what happened?
Where did everyone go?
Everybody else. But I tell you what, it was because I wanted it and I went into it honestly. You know what I mean? And you titled it perfectly. I know it's changed, but the truth about alcohol, a lot of people don't know the truth about alcohol. And that's what you gave me. And it gave me a whole different perspective, a whole different view. It gave me understanding. And yeah, I embraced it. I went for it. And then the second thing that I love that you do is that you give us opportunity to keep working with others, to keep encouraging others. And that really, without knowing, helped me along the way to stay sober, to be committed. And so don't ever stop doing that.
No,
Always encourage people, when they do break that cycle, that stronghold, encourage them to continue giving back, because it truly helps. And it's an ongoing learning experience. I learn something every day from everyone on there. It's just, I love it. I really do.
If you're thinking that there's more to life than this, then good, you're waking up. Now, one of the most critical steps when choosing to up-level your life is to find a tribe who sees and hears you, because feeling like you matter is so important. Strivers are a community of people united in the common goal of becoming people who don't drink alcohol and living a self-led life. So if you crave freedom, compassion and peace, Strive is for you. And you can join our amazing community for free. All you have to do is email thestrivemethod@gmail.com and we'll get you signed up. Well, Anna, that was that truth about you joined Strive. Actually, we're talking over 5 years ago. So
I'm going on 5 years. Yeah,
we've had having a drink. So I mean, so for people listening, what keeps you in Strive for 5 years? Because if you stopped drinking doing the course 5 years ago, why are you still there?
I'm still there because it gives back to me. I'm there giving encouragement, but in reality, it's giving back to me. And and just like I said, I learned, like Susie, she is such a powerhouse. I have seen her journey from day one, and sometimes it just, at times it just seems so hopeless. But man, she has stuck through, and look where she's at now. It's just like, and that just encourages me, and it makes me say, yes, sobriety is the way to go in life. It's just, man, I know there's a lot of other people who've been addicted to alcohol and maybe other drugs or whatever, but when they make it to the other side, you can't help but look back and just be so grateful for everybody that God used in your life. Like, he used you in my life. In fact, I just shared with a friend yesterday that I hadn't heard from in 4 years. And I was telling her a lot has happened since we last talked. I said in 2018, I decided to get sober. And then I told her, like last year, how I rededicated my life to God. And so I was just sharing this with her. And I said, actually, if you ever have time, it's a great testimony. I'd love to share it with you, how God used a guy in Cardiff, UK, to help me get sober. I said, it's crazy. And she said, of course, that she would love to hear it. For sake of time, we both were busy yesterday, but we were texting. And but to answer your question, that's why I continue giving of myself, because in reality, Strive gives back to me. And it helps me, there's not just Strive. I have a life at work. I have a life with my family. And I'm learning continually from Susie, from Tony, from everybody on there, and it's because I'm over here and they're almost there. But I've got friends and family that are addicted, and I can relate. I can help them. I can give them something. And so, yeah, that's why.
I mean,
So I encourage.
I think that, so many times in the past, especially when you was doing the work, we would talk a lot about your frustrations and your battles at work. Like, so, and to be able to, it's something I've been thinking about a lot today, is a lot of the sobriety industry focuses on getting people sober, right? There's an instant gratification feel to it. Like, we're going to run a 30-day course and you're not going to drink for 30 days, or dry January, all this type of stuff. And I'm like, well, why is that? And the reason that it is it's a lot easier to sell that. I'm going to help you stop drinking versus I'm going to help you live consciously. But to do that more often, we're really going to have to go in the shadow. You're really going to have to be truthful. You're going to be honest. You're not going to be able to run away from your life. You're going to have to be vulnerable. People don't want that sell, right? Like, it's really difficult. And it's such a shame, because if you can come into a place like Strive that doesn't have the goal to help you quit alcohol, but has the goal to help you live more consciously without drinking alcohol, then all of a sudden you take what you learn in Strive and you find yourself at the counter with a customer who's losing their shit, and you're thinking, oh, what is it that we learned here in the Strive method about communicating with people and about having compassion? And instead of applying it to alcohol, you're applying it to your working life, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's remember when I said that I didn't know I was going to learn life skills? You gave me that. You gave me that. And so every day that I go into work, it's like, it's exciting because it really is. But when, because a lot of times when you provide customer service, you know nothing about what that person walking in is carrying. You don't know what they're carrying, their burdens, their illnesses, their frustrations, or whatever, And so, when, for the most part, most of our customers are really super nice. We have longtime customers that I've built a relationship with, and everything. I've actually had opportunity to share Strive with them, and I do. If something comes up, I share Strive. I share, my testimony. But back to customers, it's I know how not to let what they're carrying get on me. I turn it around and see, how can I help you? Yeah. You know what I mean? And once you go, once they realize that, oh, she's not, you know what I mean? She actually cares. You know what I mean? It's not just me coming in here and buying something. She can detect or feel that there's something else going on. And this doesn't happen all the time, but I've had those opportunities where once they know, their guard drops, and it's like, oh, I can share. You know what I mean? I can, and they do, and I just, comfort them the best way that I can, or give them a little bit of tidbit of wisdom, what has helped me and all that. But yes, Lee, I'm so sorry. I used to come on Strive and just vent like, this customer, it was always about them. It was never about me,
Yeah, it was. Yeah. You wanted to change. I always remember you wanted to change them. It's like, why aren't these people behaving like this or behaving like that? And what I'm always trying to guide people on Strive to their inner wisdom, to constantly ask the question, how do I want to show up in life? Not like, I don't want to teach people to show up differently with their husband, to their kids, and to their people they meet at work. I want them to say, no, I'm going to show up with courage, with confidence, with clarity, with compassion, with every single person I meet, until they give me a reason to do otherwise. And even then, I'm going to approach it from a point of grace, right? And I love how that comes out of you. I mean, one of your strengths on Strive is your empathy in the written form. Like how where did that come from? You're so compassionate and so empathetic, but you're able to put it out there in text in such a beautiful way. Did you practice that? Is that journaling? And where's it come from?
No. Honestly, I've always I've always been a very compassionate person. And I think even from the time I was little, but life gives you some hard knocks and it hardens your heart, right? And, but still, even then, it's just something that God instilled in me, a heart of compassion and empathy. But in written form, it's easy. It just flows. I don't know. It just flows. And I know now that it has a lot to do with my constant communication with God. The more of Him and less of me. So a lot of the times, Lee, it's like Him just speaking through me, and I don't know how else to explain it other than that, but the compassion has always been there. But I'm constantly communing with the Lord, and He's always, searching. He's always looking for that heart, that's open to Him. So back to your question, a lot of the times it's just Him flowing through me. And He's so wise, isn't He? He's wise. He is really wise. It is Him. It is nothing of me. I'm just a vessel. And, but I'm always, sensitive to how I'm going to answer somebody, because the last thing that I want to do is turn somebody away. Right? Mm-hmm. I always want to be able to offer something that's going to help them do things differently or see things differently. Not really do, but to take the time to see things differently. And then it's up to them what they do with it. Right? So, but yeah.
And talk a little bit more about that, about God and your faith and how important that's been on this journey, because one of the biggest moans and groans you hear from people about AA is, oh, it was too religious. And I know that me and you have had conversations where you've been like, is it okay for me to talk about God here on Stride? Because we don't. It's not very religious based. Mm-hmm. People talk about God in very different ways. So how has that been for you with Strive and talking about God, and how important has God been in your journey?
Well, yes, first of all, let me I would love to thank you because for continuing to let me be me as I have grown.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I have with God is a relationship. Religion didn't work for me. Religion is about rules and regulations and all this, and God is about relationship. And growing up, I had religion. I grew up and not, nothing against Catholics, but I grew up in a Catholic religion. And, it was just learning prayers, in my experience, little. And then I remember at 13, I think 12 or 13, I was beginning to rebel. And I told my aunt, why do you make me go to church when you don't go to church? And, yeah, that was not a good thing to question her about. But I was in that rebellious stage, and she just told me to get dressed and go to church. And then she did talk to me, though. She did. I've got to give her this. She did say, Anna, once you do your confirmation, it'll be up to you whether you want to go to church or not. And I said, okay, so, and I can't explain to you what, the confirmation was all about, other than learning a bunch of prayers and then reciting them. And then it would be like, yep, okay, you're ready. And then there would be this other, like a ceremony, for everyone doing their confirmation. And then I stopped, but and I would only go to a Catholic church like Christmas, Easter, stuff like that. But at the age of 21, I was with my son's dad. We had just married, and his mom was a Christian, and I didn't know what a Christian was, honestly. But she had something different. That lady had something that was different, and I didn't understand it, but I wanted it. Life was chaos, but she had such a peace about her, such a peace. And I did not understand that. But anyway, we went to church with her. We told her we go to church, and I believe we had partied Saturday, so we didn't make it to church Sunday morning. So then my son's dad said, Anna, we told mom we would go. We should really keep our word. Let's go with her tonight. And I said, okay, sure. So we went, and it was a whole different experience. It was the way they sang to God, the way they worshiped him. I didn't understand it, but I was so moved that I just wept. I'm like, what is this? And trying to hide my tears, right? Because I didn't want people to see me being moved by the presence of God. But at the end, they do what they call an altar call. Do you want to give your heart to the Lord? And I did not know what I was doing. But so his mom came to him, and she's talking to him like, you're getting ready to leave your family for a year to go to Okinawa, don't you? And I just remember looking up at him, and he was like, he was just looking straight, and he was doing this to his mom, like, Mom, no, leave me alone, leave me alone. So she comes around to my side, and she goes, hey, would you like to? And I said, yes. And she I think I shocked her. I shocked myself, And so she told Zeke, you should go with your wife, just go up there with her. And so he did. We walked down there, and we went through the process of, they do. Now I know you don't have to do this, to receive the Lord, have a relationship. You don't have to do this, but I did it. They led me through this prayer of repentance and giving my heart to him. And it was crazy because all these people are around me, so happy for me. And I did not know what was going on. I didn't know what I had gotten myself into. I was just like, okay, this is a little too much, but okay. Well, Zeke left to go to Okinawa for a year. He was in the Marine Corps, and I was staying with his family, with his parents. And from that day, I had so many questions, Lee. It was unbelievable. It was just all these questions. And so she invited me to go to church again. And I said, yes, I would love to go. So we went, and they had a guest speaker. And I kid you not, every question that was floating in my head, he touched on in his message. And I was just like, I was flabbergasted, but all I did was cry the whole time. After the service, my ex-mother-in-law said, I need to go get the kids from the nursery. And I said, okay, I'll be there in a minute. And I stayed to talk to this guy. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. He's going to think I'm nuts. Anyway, he was talking to two little ladies, and I was getting ready to walk away. And he went like this to me, like, hold on. And so he said his goodbyes to the little old ladies. And then he came to me, and I was just crying. And I said, last Sunday I was here, and I went up there, and I gave my heart to God, and I have all these questions, and you touched on every one of them. And I don't know what I'm doing or what's happening, but, and he just was so, he just listened to me, and he took my hand, and he said, it's going to be okay. He said, what did you think that when you went up there and you gave your heart to the Lord, that fireworks were going to go off and all that? And I said, no, I don't know what to think, And so that was my journey, Lee. And the thing that happened that I noticed, here my husband is gone, leaves me with his family that I do not know. I have two little girls. Sandy and Rebecca were 4 and 5. And I had a whole year to just grow in the Lord, that whole year. I mean, I would make every prayer meeting, every class taught, anything. I was so hungry for the truth. I was so hungry. Finally, something real, something that was real to me, because I experienced it. But the thing that happened, I noticed the next day that I didn't want to smoke cigarettes. I was smoking cigarettes. I had no desire. All of a sudden I thought, oh, okay, you know, this is good. And then I had no desire to drink. I had no desire to do drugs. At the time, I was still doing drugs. I had no desire to do none of that. And that's what I mean by I experienced him. He just just took all that awfulness, desires away, and so I was sober. I was sober for a good eight 8 years, I think, until my marriage started falling apart, and I didn't have what I have now in God. I didn't have the understanding about him to keep me. All of a sudden, I just went back to everything that he had delivered me from. I just embraced it all over again. I was bitter. I was hurt. I was angry. I was everything that I used to be. And so I just went full force and started living a very self-destructive life, and my daughters, now I had a little boy, and they suffered the consequence, but this is how good God is. After all that, I have an awesome relationship with my kids. We can have conversations now about all that awfulness, and they love me and I love them. And I just, that's God. You know what I mean? That's him. That's him. He restored my relationship with my kids, but what happened when I know I'm all over the place, but when I rededicated my life to the Lord, I thought I was okay. I really thought I was okay with him. But again, he just is doing that born again thing with me all over again. And this time I'm much older and much wiser. And I'm here to stay. I am here to stay. 3 times I left him. I walked away from him. I turned my back on him and I told him so. I told him, I don't want nothing to do with you. I blamed him for everything when in reality, all he's trying to do is to rescue me from all that the world offers me. What the world offers me is temporal. It's so short, just like quitting alcohol. The satisfaction from drinking is so short lived, and then we have to pay the price for doing it. So when I rededicated my life, I thought I cannot be on Strive anymore. I really thought I couldn't because I didn't want to interfere with your work, and I also it was not going to leave God out. I knew that because he is such a big part of my life now, day and night. He's it for me. And so I didn't know how I was going to navigate that. And so I didn't want to tell you. So you're hearing it now for the first time. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't know how to have that conversation with you, but I prayed about it. And when you asked me to come back, I prayed even more. And I asked the Lord, I'm not willing to leave you out of anything because you have done so much for me. And I know where I'm at in you now. I know my identity in you. And you're not going to take the back seat anymore. And so I didn't know how to tell you this. So when you asked me to come back, I did pray even more. And I just thought, okay, Lord, if this is just an opportunity to continue helping people, and if you open the door to talk about you, I'll talk about you, and that's what I actually am doing. You know what I mean? If people ask something, I share. And I know that I'm just sharing my life with him. That's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to, convert or change or whatever. I'm just right. I mean, do you see that in me? I hope that's what you see. I'm just trying to be honest with my relationship with him every day.
What I see, going back to something you said earlier on about Maureen reaching out to you and saying, hey, take this Truth About Alcohol course, which is now called the Strive Method, because you need to fill that white space up. When I've known you for a long time now, but your new relationship with God, for me, it's all about connection and relationship. And when I read your wins, so for people listening, we like to share our wins on a daily basis. I scrutinize those with a fine tooth comb. I'm looking at everybody's wins to see what the patterns are. And yours is connection. Like you have this great connection and relationship with God. You have this great connection and relationship with your husband, with your customers, with your children. And your wins are always spending time with those people or reaching out to other people who have been in your life and reconnecting with them. So if you're ever listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, what do I do? A lot of people say, what am I going to do if I stop drinking? I'll be so bored. Well, actually, just look around you at the people who you're spending time with, but you're not really there. And then try to be really there, and you'll find the joy that comes out of that. So I love it. I love the fact that people can learn from you, and you can inspire people to look at God in a different way. Everybody in Strive, I think, looks at God in a very different way. Liza at the moment is going back to church with Zia. She wants to buy a Bible. She's rediscovering a relationship that she last had when she was a child.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it's beautiful because there's something humble about it as well. Like I haven't got all the answers. Do you know what I mean?
But Lee, I want to say this about you. You have grown so much. You're right. We have known each other, going on 5 years now. And your growth as Lee Davy, you have grown so much. And I always thought how, if ever, that you would be such a powerhouse for God, because you have grown in your compassion, in your wisdom. You have just grown, period. That's all I want to say. You've grown, and I appreciate it. We're kind of like growing together.
Yeah, well, I mean,
all of us are.
Thanks for recognizing that. Yeah, I do have a conversation with God every night before I go to bed. I say my gratitude and my appreciation. I just haven't worked out who I'm speaking to yet, and I'm okay with that. I don't, I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable. Yeah, I feel comfortable not knowing what one of the things that I'm taking from you, even just through this conversation that came for me is, you are almost, and I got this from reading Conversations with God and my interview with Neil Donald Walsh as well, is you are a mouthpiece for God, right? So you're almost like channeling his message to people, and you're there to serve. Sometimes I can be a little selfish in what I want. I want things from God. So I find myself asking for the answers, or if not the answers, to give me the lessons or to give me the experiences I need in order to succeed, which is still a little bit give me, like he's serving me. I don't think I've fully got into that power of allowing myself to allow God, spirit, universe to come through me, and for me to use my skills and my experience to expand that to the universe. Like some great leaders, I'm thinking like Preston Smiles in my Elementum coaching group is great at allowing God to speak through him and to impact people. So maybe I'm keeping myself a little bit small, but I think as I get older and wiser, that might change for sure.
It will come. It will come.
Yeah.
He likes to take the unlearned, people, somebody like me, and there's so many others. He likes to take us and just to remake us, just redo us.
Well, you're a leader, Anna. I mean, this is one of the things I love about Strive is when I see the leader in a striver and they haven't seen it for themselves yet, it's like I feel like it's such a nice, wonderful feeling to witness Anna is such a leader. Now I need to A, give her the platform to be a leader, and B, I need to help her to find that wisdom within her that knows she's a leader, and then just let her loose. I remember me saying to you in the past, I want you to run and lead these groups for me. And you're like, I don't know if I'm ready yet. I'm like, no, you are. You are. Trust me. Just get in there and do it. You'll be okay, and look at you now, So.
That alone, I was so fearful, Lee. I was just so fearful when I came into your life. I mean, I didn't have a voice. It was in here, but it wasn't, there was so much, on me, alcohol being one of them, that, that wouldn't allow me to emerge my true, self, even, in the Lord. And God has just given me the confidence. He's given me a voice, the words, he's given me and revived all that he intended for me to start with, that was robbed. It was, and it wasn't just alcohol. It was, trauma, all these, like it was on Strive that I learned that what I experienced was trauma, and I thought, no wonder I struggled so much. And I see that. And in fact, I think I shared on Strive, something new that I'm doing is I'm going to go to I'm going to start going to a therapist, just because I want to continue healing. There's areas in my life embedded in me that I think are okay, but then something happens and it triggers that pain, that woundedness in me. It'll trigger it. And I just, it's like I'm a different person. And it happened recently. And, but I was able to, to gain control, of course, communicating with God and him helping me through it. But I know now that there are still things, and I'm all about healing. I'm all about healing myself now. It's like there's no stopping me. And so I'm gonna, this next Monday, I'm gonna go, go to therapy and talk to this lady about, things that happen in my life that I think are okay, but then something will happen and it'll trigger those emotions and that woundedness in me. And I want to take care of that so that I can feel whole. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I do. And you'll be more powerful and you'll be able to touch more people. When you said, you were talking about that woman earlier on that was inspirational for you about going to church. You're like, I don't know what this woman had, but I want it. That tells me that this woman was healed. Like she'd done a lot of work around her healing and she was getting her approval, security, and control from herself, from her wisdom, not letting ego take the reins too often, So I think it's really important. And don't forget as well, Anna, we're talking about it this week. Just reach out and say, Lee, next week, there are the times I'm available for hot seat coaching, and we'll make those times the times that I turn up to coach. I don't want to be like.
Can you tell me about that? What is, because I've never attended one.
You've never attended one. So basically every week, but in January, I'm going to do twice a week because I was sick in December. Anybody who's a striver, I'm going to be there for an hour twice a week to do coaching. So I'm there and you'll come on and you'll say, hey, Lee, this happened to me the other day. Steve said something. I reacted like this and I don't know why. And I want to react in a different way. And we'll go through that and we'll do coaching. There are other people there. So there's that vulnerability piece, that bravery and courage of speaking with other people. But there's that other side of it where like Tony will come on, for example, and he doesn't like to be on the spotlight, but I'm sure he learns so much by seeing other people be coached. So, that's just there for you. So use that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Anna, I'm going to go. I'm going to pee myself in a minute. But before I do, I just want to say I love you dearly. Thank you for your support, your wisdom. It's not easy to dedicate your life to helping people to quit alcohol and live consciously when the shame and the embarrassment and the humiliation prevents them from even taking action. It's not an easy gig. And for you to trust me in those moments and then just become such a leader in our community. I love you so much, and you're a friend and a leader. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. The feeling is mutual. You have done so much. Too long of a list to mention, but you have helped me. I am where I am today because of you and what you have to offer. And then, God just kind of took over. And so, it's awesome. It's great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Just a few thank yous. First of all, I want to thank you guys and girls for listening to this podcast and being supporters of it. Many people stop drinking alcohol just by listening to this podcast. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, thanking me for that, right? So give this to somebody as a gift today, or rate and review the podcast. If you can rate and review the podcast on your local podcast player and tell somebody about it, you could change somebody's life today, okay? So thank you for listening, and thank you in advance for that piece of service. Also want to thank our producer, Stan. Stan is still currently in the Ukraine, fighting the war and producing our podcast while his family is somewhere else in the world right now, okay, apart from him. So everybody send out your prayers and your love. Stan, we love you. Thank you very much for everything you do here. For you out there, if you are starting to think about, contemplate, reflect on your relationship with alcohol, you do not have to do this alone. Yes, you drink alone, but you don't have to stop alone, okay? And if alcohol is not your thing, but you are starting to feel that you actually are living a parts-led life, the ego is getting in the way too much, so you're not happy with the way life is going, then reach out to us at thestrivemethod@gmail.com. Just say, Lee, and just tell me what is on your mind, and we'll start to have that conversation. Strive community is a beautiful place where you can start to feel seen, heard, and matter. It's where you can get community, and it's where you can start practicing what we call the 8 C's of self, our core values, right? Of creativity, curiosity, connection, compassion, courage. I can't remember the rest of them, but there's 8 of them, right? And we have our quest structured. So we have assignments, and they're really interesting, exciting. At the end of them, we say to you, come on, do this quest, right? Get involved in this challenge. And strivers are really finding it exciting, and they're working their challenges in these areas that are going to increase the amount of time they spend in self-energy, in a state of flow. And that has amazing repercussions for the relationship you grow with yourself, and for how you reach out to others in their life, like how you parent, how you are as a child to your, not child, but a son or a daughter, how you are in the relationship with the person you share your bed with, and how you behave with your employees, right? So reach out to me at strivemethod@gmail.com if you want to learn more. Okay, much love, everybody.